Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving right into a massive shift happening across the globe. We're looking at how the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AfCFTA, is rapidly transforming 54 distinct nations into a single, high-speed strategic bridge for global trade by 2026. If you're keeping an eye on global markets, this is absolutely a transformation you need to understand.
Think back to the early 2000s. Trying to ship goods into African markets felt a lot like trying to solve a giant puzzle where half the pieces were missing, right? Fast forward to 2026, and that puzzle is finally forming a clear, stunning picture. A highly streamlined, unified market of 1.3 billion people. Africa has literally always had the potential, but what's fundamentally changed today is the execution.
Let's put some numbers to this, and honestly, they're massive. We are looking at a combined GDP knocking on the door of $3.4 trillion. By slashing tariffs on over 90% of goods, intra-African trade is projected to hit around $230 billion. That is creating an incredible strategic bridge to entirely new centers of demand.
So, how are we breaking this down? Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the 2026 trade reality. Then we'll tour SADC, the EAC, ECOWAS, and the Northern Gateways. After that, we'll map out the GCC Africa Strategic Axis, and we'll wrap the whole thing up with your 2026 entry playbook.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the 2026 trade reality.
Have you heard of PAPSS? This is the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, and it's a total game changer. Think about it. For decades, trading between two African nations meant you had to use a third-party currency like the US dollar and route it all the way through clearing banks in New York or London. Well, not anymore. PAPSS allows instant local currency settlement. It slashes transaction times down to minutes and completely bypasses those heavy currency conversion fees.
Moving right along to Section 2, SADC, the minerals powerhouse.
If your business touches EV batteries, semiconductors, or industrial tech, you've got to pay attention here. SADC is a fascinating security hedge against those crazy global supply chain shocks we've been seeing. It's home to a concentrated reserve of critical minerals. We're talking copper, cobalt, lithium, diamonds, and platinum group metals. These aren't just rocks. They're the non-negotiable building blocks of our high-tech future.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the shift that AfCFTA is incentivizing. We're moving away from simply exporting raw materials. Instead of just shipping raw dirt directly to Asia, new midstream processing hubs are popping up in places like South Africa and Zambia. This is creating a massive opening for global capital and chemical engineering to transform those raw ores into refined products right there on the continent.
Let's head over to Section 3, the EAC, which is serving as a massive agriculture and digital hub.
You know the legacy of mobile money in East Africa, right? Well, the East African community has basically taken that digital DNA and merged it with agriculture. Now, a single plant health, or phytosanitary, certificate covers cross-border movement. This cuts down transit times dramatically and turns the vision of Africa as a global farming powerhouse into a strict operational reality.
To really put this into perspective, let's look at Ethiopia. You have a newly liberalized market of 120 million people, and they're gearing up for a massive agricultural expansion. By partnering with EAC producers, global logistics firms can build out smart warehousing to fuel expansions into these huge, newly opened markets, supplying all the fertilizers and petrochemicals they're demanding. That brings us to Section 4, ECOWAS and the Northern Gateways.
Breaking the continent down like this really lets you target your strategy. In West Africa's ECOWAS region, Nigeria's massive population is driving a huge surge in middle-class consumer demand. Meanwhile, up north, Morocco and Egypt are acting as these incredibly sophisticated industrial anchors for automotive manufacturing and textiles. They're literally the perfect duty-free entry points for triangular trade, connecting Europe, the Middle East, and the African interior.
Next up, Section 5, the GCC Africa Strategic Axis.
This is where it gets incredibly strategic. Gulf Financing and TAC are teaming up with African production to build these stable, highly profitable revenue streams that are actually insulated from global geopolitical shocks. The GCC gets lower costs for critical food supplies. In return, Africa's infrastructure boom absorbs Gulf industrial outputs. Plus, because a factory here can now serve 1.3 billion people entirely duty-free, taking equity stakes in African processing facilities is becoming an absolute no-brainer.
Finally, Section 6, your 2026 entry playbook.
Okay, so how do you actually move the goods? Choosing the right physical artery is crucial for your speed to market. Need to move consumer tech or fast-moving goods? The Northern Corridor is your best bet. Exporting heavy mining gear, you're going to want the Walvis Bay Corridor on the Atlantic side. And if you're moving heavy industrial inputs into Ethiopia, that Djibouti rail link cuts transit time from days down to under 12 hours. Now, here is a number you absolutely need to memorize: 40%. To legally qualify for zero-duty movement across these borders, it takes more than just a stamp. Most manufactured goods require a minimum of 35 to 40% local content. That makes last-mile local assembly a massive competitive advantage because it turns imported parts into duty-free African goods.
So, let's look at 4 concrete steps to actually pull this off. Step 1. Identify your cluster and analyze the tariff offers using your HS codes. Step 2. Nail down your compliance by securing those vital certificates of origin. Step 3. Partner up with verified, trusted suppliers. And Step 4. Pilot your operation in just one corridor, measure everything, and scale fast. The biggest winners here are going to be the ones who iterate quickly.
Now you might be wondering, how on earth do I manage all this without setting up an office in 54 different countries? Well, successful operators are relying on centralized digital platforms like Tendify. They're using AI to track price volatility, tapping into verified freight directories, and calculating tariffs automatically, and lets you securely command your cross-border operations from literally anywhere in the world.
Look at this quote because it really hits the nail on the head. The ultimate takeaway from this explainer is that the market consistently rewards those who replace hesitation with well-documented systems and foresight. AfCFTA isn't just some promise for the distant future. It is delivering measurable progress right now, and the window to get positioned early is wide open.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this question. Are you going to wait around for perfect conditions while competitors solve the puzzle, or are you going to map out your first opportunity and step onto the continent with informed confidence? The 2026 African corridors are open for business. Thanks for tuning in, and I highly encourage you to start strategizing your next big move today.